I mean, that's what they say. The sexual prime of a woman is late 30s, early 40s, right? So this makes complete sense. This is taken out of reality.
Totally. Yeah. And I felt like we hadn't seen that story on screen enough. And it's, I think in general, women's portrayal when it comes to sex and sexuality has been.
Eric.
Where?
I actually live across the street. You all right, babe? You're shaking.
Listen, I'm gonna get some air.
Zoe, how's it going?
It's good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I think, okay, so I've seen half this season because I'm not a binge watcher, so I like to enjoy and fester in shows and take them in. So I'll catch the other half when it goes on Roku. But from like the 4 episodes I saw, basically the message of this story is like good oral, receiving and giving can change your life completely. And right? Is that what we're doing? This is literally the starting point of what happens to May's character.
Yes. Well, I guess, sure. Yes. Good oral. But also I think, it's the story of a woman who later in life, at 37, sort of experiences a sexual awakening in which she is in charge of her own sexual pleasure, and unapologetically going after
that's what they say.
Sexual pleasure, and that is such a transporting experience that yes, she is she's thrust into a multiverse, so to speak.
Totally. I mean, that's what they say. The sexual prime of a woman is late 30s, early 40s, right? So this makes complete sense. This is taken out of reality.
Totally. Yeah. And I felt like we hadn't seen that story on screen enough. And it's, I think in general, women's portrayal when it comes to sex and sexuality has been fraught in film and television. And so it was exciting to explore it in a way that was sexy and fun and escapist, but also, could maybe subvert some of those tropes.
Yeah, but you know what? It's been interesting because you're correct. I've seen a lot of your work, Lola versus Band-Aid is another one I've seen, and you've always kind of touched on the aspect of relationships, sexuality, sex in itself. Like, has that been always a curiosity for yours? Because like going back in your work, you've either written about it, scripts for it, or acted in these parts and just done these sort of roles in films. Has that always been kind of an interest to you to explore more and kind of bring out to the television and film world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, those are the great questions of life.
Yeah, it's
like,
relatable too, and
how to get a relationship right is a code that so few have cracked, if any.
I have not personally. So,
and even people who are in long-term relationships, there's just so many questions, and there's such complex organisms to navigate that I find them so ripe for exploring in film and television. And every time I do try to do it through a different lens, Band-Aid was a musical but even though it was looking at the way a long-term couple fights, and this is obviously a multiverse sex romp. So I try to explore the same themes, but through a different lens.
Yeah, I like the age of the characters here. Like the late 30s is an interesting age because it's like usually you would imagine that someone be like at a point in life, either they're getting divorced or they have a few kids and that sort of point. Like what happens when you're in your late 30s, kind of approaching 40s? An interesting point because a lot of times these days in reality, it's like people are starting up their life again, or getting to dating world again. I'm 37, so this is my age range in that way too. So I see, swiping and all that, people my age, and it's just like, oh, I'm back in a dating scene, kind of relearning themselves as if it's almost like the age where especially if you're becoming single again, you're kind of realizing you were stuck in a long relationship that wasn't working, like you're coming out of college. It's just like at an older age, I feel like that's sort of the thing. And it's interesting to see how we see this world, because a lot of these new things are happening new because you were in such a thing involved for a long time in a lot of places. Or if you were single, you're coming to a point where at a crossroads. It's an interesting age to tackle. Don't you feel like kind of the late 30s is like a new chapter in a lot of people's lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially, quarantine was a motherfucker for so many relationships. And I think there are so many now on the other side of it who are in these new stages, who have gotten out of long-term relationships that I don't know if quarantine hadn't happened, if they would have made the same decisions. And I do think it's really interesting, all of these crossroads or the thresholds that we cross at all ages, like they are sort of rebirths, which the show is about, right? It's like jumping from world to world and life to life, and the ways that we take on these different versions of ourselves depending on who we're with.
How much did you use of like your personal experience? Because like this is your baby in a sense. You wrote, directly, like star in it. Like this is very much your project. How much real life inspiration did you use, or was it completely kind of like more fantasy of you thinking yourself what you would do in an alternate kind of reality? How much truth maybe it's from your own personal kind of experiences of people that you brought into these characters and even May?
I mean, I always start with my own personal experience, or sort of infusing my friends and community's personal experiences into it.
Do not tell Zoe your personal secrets. It might end up on a show.
But I think, like it's always a question that starts the process for me artistically, of like the question that I'm struggling with, or the thing that I'm facing in my own personal life that I'm trying to answer. And so I think, like figuring out what that is that keeps us all sort of eternally restless or eternally unsatisfied, like why we all feel that way, and what we do with that, especially when it comes to fantasy. So a lot of these worlds weren't based in reality, but they were based in fantasy, and I wanted to see what my fantasies would look like if they actually were played out. and
do you like them how they came out? Do you like the vision that you illustrated?
No, they're all terrible, and I think that's the point.
Leave them as fantasies in that case, right?
Yeah.
Would you hang out with May? What do you think would happen if Zoe met May? Like, would you guys get along, or what sort of relationship would that be? I'm curious.
That's an interesting question. Oh yeah, I would hang out with her. She's not all that different. I mean, I think like May is messy. And
We all are.
I wanted her to be messy, I wanted her to be a really flawed character who had to face the ugliest parts of herself on this journey. So, I hope that she sort of serves as a mirror. I think if we hung out, it'd be interesting for me to see what she brought out in me and what I brought out in her. And clearly that's kind of, what I was doing as an actor too, because we were meeting every day.
There you go. You're taking on that alternate reality there. How many seasons did you cook up in your mind for the show? I mean, how many multiverses are we going into, or does it become stable maybe down the road? Did you kind of plan out a long-term plan for the show, like multiple maybe seasons, or previously what happens after this one wraps up?
I did. I had an idea for multiple seasons. And Roku hasn't greenlit a second season, but they did greenlight Writer's Room to write a second season. So that has already happened. And so we have all scripts written for season 2. So fingers crossed we get to make it, because it's a really fun and wild ride.
That's cool. That's good. So that's a good sign there. Any reservations? I mean, you strip it away literally physically and emotionally in the show. Did you ever have any reservations about either nudity or just kind of going all the way? Because I feel like you committed to this role, and that's it shows, because you went all in from episode first,
Yeah. I think I was scared for sure because it's quite vulnerable,
Sure.
especially as a woman, to be in such explicit sex scenes and to be literally so exposed. I think I always try to lean into the things that I'm most scared of. And for me, it would have been very different if I was in this role and I hadn't written and directed it. But for me to have written and directed it, it meant that I had so much agency over the portrayal of sex and sexuality, especially because my body was the body on the line, so to speak. So I wanted to lean into it in a way that felt, a little dangerous, I think, especially for viewers, because I think we aren't really given the opportunity to experience women's sexuality in such a raw and unapologetic way when it's not through the lens of a male director. So it was scary, but I'm glad I did it, at least for now.
There you go. Well, it's out there, Zoe. So no, I appreciated the boldness of everything you did with this character and the show. It's a cool look. And it's, like I said, if it feels like real people, although there's a multiverse, but it's still relatable, in so many ways, which is the great thing you can say about a show that, I don't want to binge it because I want to take it in and keep on watching it. So that's a great thing you did. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that writer room and there's no strike, hopefully, first of all, but gets to work and we see more of the story.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Oh, this is great, Zoe. I hope to catch up on the next one or season 2 or whatever you're working. I'm always watching.
Yeah, that's right. All right, cool. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do you come here a lot?
No, I've actually never been here before.
Meg, bitch, where have you been all my life?